Welcome to From Embers to Excellence, a podcast that explores the many facets of leadership from the perspectives of some amazing people. We discuss the triumphs and failures that have shaped our lives and our leadership philosophies. It isn't whether we fail that defines us, but when we do fail, how do we respond? Leaders dust off the ashes and use their failures as fuel to work harder, and as lessons to come back wiser and stronger, more resilient, more determined, and more committed to excellence. And now, here is your host, Dave Horlenbach.
Today, I'm talking with the fire chief for Maitland Fire Rescue. He was hired by the city of Maitland in February of 2001. He worked his way up through the ranks, serving as a firefighter paramedic, an engineer paramedic, lieutenant paramedic, battalion chief, deputy chief, and now he is the fire chief. He holds a bachelor's degree in emergency management from Waldorf University and an associate's degree in fire science from Columbia Southern University. He holds Fire Officer 2, Fire Instructor 3, and Fire Safety Officer certifications with the state of Florida. I just wanted to get into a little bit of your background, what kind of led you into the fire service. Maybe give us some background of your life growing up. What was your family like? Did you play any sports? That kind of stuff. Give us a foundation.
Well, certainly. Thank you for having me. My father is a retired deputy sheriff, Orange County Sheriff's Office. So certainly he paved the way in public service for me. My mother retired as a real estate agent in the Orlando area. And so they both worked very hard to provide for the family. I knew I wanted to do the same for my future family. And so with my father's background in public safety as the working for the sheriff's office, I knew that I wanted to follow his footsteps. It wasn't until I rode as a ride-along program with the sheriff's office and took some classes in criminal justice that I realized that law enforcement was not for me. And so being a firefighter and an EMT and then subsequently a paramedic was the next avenue that I wanted to travel down.
Where did you grow up? I'm guessing in Orange County. What high school did you go to? And did you play any sports?
Yeah, so I played high school football. I went to Winter Park High School. Well, prior to Winter Park, I attended Trinity Prep and then graduated from Winter Park. I grew up in the Winter Park, Winter Springs area, just outside of Oviedo. And I consider Oviedo to be my home only because it just was the closest area that from where I grew up. And pretty much lived in that area my entire life. I like living close enough to where I can have the various luxuries of life, but also far enough away to where I'm not in the hustle of downtown or high congestion areas.
What was your family life like when you were growing up?
My family life was very family oriented. Dinners at nighttime, all together, weekends together with the family, whether it's sports events or just outside with the family. I grew up, definitely family oriented. I have an older sister, 6 years older than me. And so she rode horses. And we spent a lot of time at horse shows and watching her doing that, field. That along with playing football. My family was always there to support me. That really instilled a lot in me as far as the kind of man that I wanted to be and how I wanted to be there for my children.
What are some of your fondest memories growing up?
I would say some of my fondest memories are working with my dad around the yard. We lived on almost 3 acres of land, and having horses and having a lot of property required a lot of maintenance. And I was always outside with my father, whether it was helping him just doing basic tasks like cutting grass, or whether we were cutting down a tree or stretching a new fence line. Um, my fondest memories were watching him and learning from him, and then doing the task myself as I got older.
What was the hardest challenge you had to overcome to get in the fire service, and how did you overcome that?
One of the hardest challenges is I'm not very good in school. I don't have the skill set to sit down and read a book and memorize something and then apply that knowledge to a written test. So going to school was not something I enjoyed because I knew I wasn't going to be good at taking a test. And so I had to work very hard at that. And it wasn't uncommon for me to have to retake a test, or it wasn't uncommon for me to have to study very hard and study in groups and flashcards and things like that. And so that was extremely challenging. The academic portion of of school, whether it was my formal education in emergency management, or whether it was, paramedic school. In fact, I had to retake my paramedic state test. And I passed it on the second time taking it, but it was a difficult test. And the difficulty was preparing for it and trying to anticipate the questions that were going to be asked. So probably my most difficult time getting into the fire service career was the academic portion of it. The physical fitness part of it came very easy to me. I've always been relatively physically fit, and so learning the skills of being a firefighter were rather easy. And in fact, I enjoyed that part a lot.
Well, I'm sure your background, learning from your father, those skills, manual labor, kind of uh, learning how to use tools, and just taking care of the property really helped out a lot, with your capacity to understand the manual labor side of firefighting.
Yeah, certainly. You learn the skills in fire school and the techniques, and then you apply lessons that you've learned in your life and how to do certain things, and uh, you hone those skills, and I really enjoyed learning the art of firefighting, the art of cutting a vehicle up, and the mechanics behind it. I thoroughly enjoyed that.
Now, what would you identify as the hardest challenge you faced while in the field? As what, whether it was when you were in the role of firefighter, lieutenant, battalion chief, just, a challenge that uh, you came up against, possibly on a call or even in the station.
So I would say the most challenging part is while, um, and I can't speak for everyone, but I can speak for myself. So during your career as a firefighter, every scene that you go to, you develop I used to call it a Rolodex of scenes in your head. So, for instance, if you went on a house fire, you put everything that you did on that house fire in this Rolodex and this file card. And the very next house fire you go on, you apply all of your experience on things that went right and things that went wrong, and then you apply the training that you have had up to that point. And one of the most difficult things was trying to blend all of those experiences and training together to make a tactical decision on whether you're saving someone's life on a medical scene, or whether you're fighting a fire or cutting up a vehicle in an entrapment. Some of the split second decisions that have to be made, um, that is rather difficult at times. And then when you make the wrong decision, identifying the lessons learned so that you can improve your skills for the next call.
Do you have any examples?
Yeah, so when I was a lieutenant, we had a gas station just on the other side of where the station is located on 1792 that was called in a mid-afternoon. I believe it was during the summer, mid-afternoon fire. Was called in from across the street. Actually, our fire administration called in the fire, and our battalion chief got on scene first and reported heavy fire showing from the Alpha side, which was the 1792 side of the building. And I knew this was my first new area. I knew the building very well, and I knew it had an access road that went around the whole building. And I wanted to get a good multi-view look of the building that had active fire showing. So I instructed my driver operator to drive the engine around the backside of the building because I wanted to get that 360-degree view. As we approached the backside of the building, our access point to the front was going to be blocked. I knew I didn't want to park in the very front of the building because I wanted to leave the room for a truck company and or additional apparatus to come in. And so I wanted to park on the side of the building and make our advance with hose lines in from that side of the building. But my access was blocked. And so we had to reposition our truck, which gave us a disadvantage in making an aggressive attack on the fire. In hindsight, the lessons learned was, knowing your area very well and knowing that access road that had that block in it. Obviously, if I was to do it over again, I would not have taken that route. But I thought at the time when the fire was called in, I thought that was the best choice. And so we took it, and obviously it turned out to be an error on our part.
Throughout your career in the fire service, I know that you've come in contact with some phenomenal leaders. I'm wondering, out of those individuals that you've engaged with, who would you say influenced your career the most, and why that individual?
So I would say, hands down, the individual that influenced my career the most is my former fire chief, Kimberly Neisler. She, I've worked through the ranks together, but when I was hired with the fire department, she was lieutenant, and I was under her command for a brief period of time. But with the history that she had in the fire service and the experiences that she had in this particular fire department, she shared all those experiences. And working with her through the various ranks up to when she retired, I was her deputy chief. She never missed an opportunity to share those lessons with me, whether they were things that went right or things that went wrong. And I would be remiss if I did not also mention one of my previous lieutenants that has since retired, Steve Brown. And I mention him because he wanted excellence out of his crew. And when I think of a lieutenant that comes to mind of someone that truly wants the very best for their crew, no matter what, builds them up and breaks them down when they need to be, it was him. For instance, if you couldn't answer certain pump operator questions while you were one of his firefighters, well, you didn't drive for him because he expected the best and he made you the best. And I'll never forget that lieutenant and the lessons that he has taught me.
What is the most memorable moment that you've had in the fire service?
So the lieutenant that I just mentioned, Lieutenant Steve Brown, both of his parents were killed in a motorcycle accident. A drunk driver actually hit them when they were up in North Carolina. And I was relatively new on the job. I was under 2 years on, and One of the things that I remember so well in the fire service is how the entire shift took off and went up to North Carolina to attend the funeral and to be by his side because of the sudden loss of his parents. Um, the other thing that really hit home to me and made me realize the true brother and sisterhood bond of the fire service is that in a small department like Maitland, so Steve was on A shift, and so all of A shift went up to attend the funeral. And since A shift was not going to be present for their normal workday, B and C shift both worked time trades to fill in the spots of A shift. Um, that level of brother and sisterhood I have never seen before in my life. And I'll never forget that. And it instilled something in me that, truly the fire service is a fraternal group of humans that will really do anything for one another, whether it's and during an emergency call or because of a personal event that takes place.
Now, starting off in the fire service in 2001, what goals did you set for yourself in the fire service? And well, let me ask you this question first. How old were you when you started?
I was 23 when I started at Maitland.
So, just from my personal experience, when I started in the fire service, my mindset was I wanted to be, that smoke eating firefighter my entire career. And then as time goes on, you realize that there's more to the fire service, and you can have more influence um, as as you take on more responsibility and move up through the ranks. So I'm curious, in the beginning of your career, what goals did you set for yourself, just career wise and in your personal life?
So career wise, I wanted to just learn the job. I wanted to, when I started, I had some very seasoned firefighters on my shift that, made the job look very easy, talked about it like it was, like fighting a fire was just something that you do. And to me, I didn't know anything about it other than what you learn in fire school. And so my primary goal when I got hired on was just be the very best I can be, learn as much as I can, try to learn from others, the things that went right, the things that went wrong, and just apply those skills to my own development. Then about a year and a half in, I knew the department was going to grow. We were going to double in size from a one station fire department to a two station fire department. And so there was a lot of chatter in the fire station about promotions, and I had never really thought about that. I had achieved pump operator certification, so I knew how to pump the fire truck and knew how to put water in hose lines, but I never really thought about it until someone approached me and said, the engineer position is a promotable position, and you work in the capacity of a lieutenant in a lieutenant's absence, and so on. And so I decided to start taking some tests for that, and then working towards future advancements in the fire department made me realize that if you want to instill change and you want to be part of the decision on making those changes, then you need to promote up in the fire department. I knew I always had leadership capabilities because every job that I worked in, I maintained some form of leadership role, whether it was a supervisor or in management in some kind of capacity. And so I knew that I had those skills about me, but I just didn't know anything about the fire service starting on. So I wasn't about to think that I could be a fire chief or be a battalion chief or a lieutenant in the fire service when I first started. I just really wanted to learn the job. I wanted to be the firefighter that I wanted coming to my door when I dialed 911.
So as you moved through the ranks, how did you establish your goals moving forward? And let's say we'll broaden that question, and also I'll repeat because I wanted to get an idea of what goals you set for yourself personally, for your personal life, kind of um, what. So in my opinion, it's those goals that you set for yourself in your personal life that kind of drive the goals that you set for yourself in your professional life, because it's your professional life that allows you to accomplish a lot of the things in your personal life, whether it's, if you want to travel the world or something like that. um, uh, and that would be, I guess, separate. Well, no, I mean, if you're wanting to build a family, you want to be able to provide for them, which kind of drives you to want to develop professionally as well. So I'm just curious, as you move through your career, how did you go about setting goals for yourself professionally and personally? And then which of those goals have you accomplished, and what goals have you set that you've yet to achieve?
Started in the fire service as a single bachelor and enjoying the time off that had to offer. But I knew that I wanted a family. My parents raised me in a very family oriented environment. I wanted to provide the same thing for my future kids. And so, obviously, with having a family comes the additional responsibility and the financial implications, and advancement in the fire department will provide that extra money. And so I knew I already wanted to be the very best firefighter I could be, the best paramedic that I could be, learn the job to the best of my ability. And I knew that I had leadership capabilities within me. And so I knew advancement was the direction that I wanted to go, and tying the two together, my personal life along with my professional life, advancement in the fire department seemed like the best course. Um, as I advanced, I became educated, getting all the vocational classes out of the way to meet the advancement requirements, promotional requirements of the fire department. And as I got closer and closer to getting into administration, I started working on my formal degree and obtained my associate and bachelor's degree. My long term goal is obviously to remain healthy and retire, but also continue to give back. The fire service has given me tremendous things and a great career, and I want to continue to give back to not only the fire service but the community. And so, uh, something that I'm trying to figure out on where that's going to take me is what my next opportunity is going to be that I can give back to the community, a community that's given so much to me.
So as you prepared yourself for advancement, did you did you establish short-term goals, long-term goals? Did you have uh, an end state that you were trying to achieve, or did you just kind of did you just kind of wing it? Because I know both sides. I know that early on in my career, I just kind of went along with kind of what was expected, and um, I wanted to be the best that I could be in each position that I held. So I always took classes specific for those positions. And then when I made engineer, I started taking the fire officer classes, and I believe that's when you and I met first. So I want to say that was probably 15 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I did not have goals per se. I wanted to obviously be ready for promotion and learn the skills of the job, but I had no desire to be the fire chief. I had no desire to be the deputy chief in the fire department. So opportunities opportunities definitely came up, and I was prepared for them. And I did not achieve every promotion the first time I went out for it. So definitely nothing was handed to me, and it wasn't like I had this okay, at 6 years I want to be a lieutenant, and at 10 years I want to be a battalion chief, and none of that. I really had no idea other than watching others and learning others, and along the way, um, I would say it's a mixture of preparing for the next opportunity and then winging it all combined together. Um, you know, there's so much of the fire service is like that. Because it's so unpredictable. Um, I just made sure I was ready and I was prepared. But I think being ready and prepared is what I think the driver behind that for me was to learn the job and to be the best at the job that I could be. Um, and in doing so, you're naturally preparing yourself for the next opportunity.
If you had it to do all over again, knowing what you know now, would you do things differently?
Yes, I would definitely do things differently. I would not have promoted as quickly as I did, and I don't necessarily I'm not I don't think I did anything wrong, because I'm certainly very grateful for the opportunities that were given to me, and especially the position that I'm in right now. But to if I was to say to a group of firefighters in their first 5 years on the job, is I would say enjoy it, learn as much as you can, take every day and soak it in, because your career goes by very fast. And so enjoy the ride. And to some degree, I pushed myself through the career very quickly with promotions and preparing for future opportunities and trying to learn the job the best I can, versus sometimes just sitting back and letting the job come to you, let experiences come to you, and enjoying every moment. I certainly enjoyed my career. I've enjoyed every aspect of it, but I think if I was to do it all over again, I would slow down a bit and take every day and soak it in a little more than I did.
What goals have you set for yourself that you haven't accomplished yet?
So a professional goal that I've yet to accomplish is I want to achieve my Chief Fire Officer certification for the Centers of Public Safety Excellence, and achieve a personal credentialing as a fire chief. That's a personal goal that I'd like to achieve. I'm also looking towards getting my graduate degree. That is another goal that I have in mind. So professional goals, those are some things that I have. On a personal goal, like I said before, I want to stay physically fit. I want to stay healthy. I want to retire and enjoy life. I think that we hear studies all the time and read articles too many times about firefighters that retire and their life ends way too soon. And so physical and mental health are very important, especially after a long career in the fire service. And so I want to maintain a healthy lifestyle so that I could enjoy retirement.
Now, how have you measured your own personal success in the fire service? And then second part to that question, as a fire chief, how do you measure the success of your people?
Well, that's funny. I was actually going to say my personal success is a reflection of the success of the fire department and the success of the members of the fire department. If the if the fire department succeeds, then I succeed. So I think the two go hand in hand. So one of the things that I had to deal with early on, and as a fire chief, is going through accreditation deferral with the CPSC, the Center for Public Safety Excellence. Maitland Fire Rescue Department is a fire accredited fire department. And so during the transition of me being a deputy chief to a fire chief, we were going through reaccreditation. And it was during that reaccreditation efforts that we were notified that we were going to be deferred. Now, deferred means that we did not meet the reaccreditation benchmarks that were needed to go and sit before the board. That was a very humbling experience for me as the brand new fire chief to have to report to my boss, City Hall, and say that we did not get reaccredited, that we have to rework our accreditation efforts and fix some errors that we had in order to be reaccredited. And so we are in the final stages of doing that now. And we believe very strongly that we will achieve reaccreditation. And so that was a point in my career that I had to dig deep and realize that getting the department through that successfully was going to be a monumentous task, and one that I had to make sure that I saw it through for the entire fire department, not for me, but for all of the members of the fire department, because it is a reflection of all of us. And me being the chief, I took on that responsibility and put some very key people in places that could help get the entire fire department through the accreditation effort.
Being deferred and making sure that that deferral isn't the end all, that you do achieve reaccreditation. Knowing you, I'm sure that, and knowing people in the area that we both look up to, that are experiencing all that, I'm sure you reached out to them and probably got some advice. And just curious, what advice was provided and how have you applied that?
The feedback that I got from other fire chiefs was just tremendous and full of positive support. And what they told me was that I needed to look at this as an opportunity to reshape the fire department. See, what you don't want to do is you don't want to look at accreditation as a way that you are going to try to mold a fire department's operations fit into an accreditation model. Rather, what accreditation needs to be is a roadmap on how to properly run a fire department with the lessons learned, the international lessons learned from other fire departments on industry standard, effective response. You were able to take the operations of your fire department and apply those lessons. And so what the deferral did was it allowed us to take a deep look into how we do things, how the Maitland Fire Department has always done things, and then say, okay, this is how things were done before. This is what accreditation says that we need to do. And based on industry standard, this is what we need to do to move forward. And this is how we are going to achieve reaccreditation. And so it's been a tremendous opportunity for us to change things for the better in this fire department. Maitland Fire Department has always done things very good. But this gave us an opportunity to even improve on those things that that needed tweaking. And without the deferral, we would not have taken that deep look inside of how we've done things and given us an opportunity to change them.
There is an awesome quote that's attributed to Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, the philosopher emperor. He studied Stoicism. He was considered a Stoic. The quote that's attributed to him is, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." So standing at a wall of opposition is intimidating, but it also creates motivation. Knowing the wall you have to climb can push you to find a way over it. So what you were just talking about, initially, I'm sure it was, well, you said it yourself, it was a humbling experience to be told by the Center for Public Safety Excellence that you're being deferred for reaccreditation. But what that did was it actually created this opportunity. Well, it helped you recognize an opportunity, and you seized that opportunity. And it's just, I just thought it was pretty cool that what you just said basically sums up that ancient wisdom.
Yes, I actually would not have preferred it any other way. It has been a long, tough road, and then you add COVID-19 to it, and it has been a long, tough road on flat tires. Seeing that we appear to be headed in the road towards reaccreditation, it has grown us to be a very strong, bonded fire department that has thoroughly looked at every aspect of what we do and why we do it.
That kind of leads me into well, something that you said earlier, and what you just said leads me into this next question. Can you tell me a little bit about your philosophy on leadership in general, and then as a fire officer, a chief officer in the field running calls, as a command officer, your leadership philosophy regarding leading in high stress environments?
Yeah, so in and around the fire station as the fire chief, I very much have a coaching style form of leadership, and almost a collaborative approach form of leadership around the fire department. And the reason for that is this: is yes, I may hold the title as fire chief, but I do not know everything. I certainly do not know everything in regards to ops. I have firefighters, lieutenants, and chief officers in the fire department that have more experience than I do, running calls out there, scene management, and things like that. And so it's important for me to recognize that. And so when there's a policy decision that has to be made, when there is an operational decision that has to be made, it's important that I go and I reach out to certain individuals of the fire department and think things through, because I do not know everything and I do not have all of the answers. So that does two things for me in my experience. One is it gets a broad approach towards a solution to a problem, and two, it creates buy-in. And those are two things that that I feel are very successful in making a decision and leading a fire department. Now, when it comes to scene management, it comes to making certain judgment calls and scene direction on an emergency situation. That's a little bit different of an approach. That's more of a direct leadership style of we need to get the job done. However, there comes a point in time when you're commanding a scene or you're making decisions that you must take a step back and evaluate your decisions and evaluate if you've made the right call and is a plan B necessary. Those are very different ways of thinking. One, scene, very direct. Two, around the fire station and making policy and decisions. And the collaborative approach using the people in your fire department that have certain skill sets that you do not have.
On that note, I would imagine that you didn't formulate those philosophies in a vacuum. I'm sure that you have some experiences that helped shape that philosophy. Can you talk a little bit about your personal experiences, maybe your successes, and maybe some poor decisions you made that led you to go, okay, well, I'm never going to do that again.
Well, yeah. So I was a very young lieutenant, very young company officer, and I remember we had a problem. We, as in my entire shift, me included, had a problem with when we turned over the station for the next crew. That the next crew always complained of a dirty kitchen. And I'm sure this is not isolated to the Maitland Fire Department and the two particular shifts, my shift and the shift that relieved us in the morning. But our old fire station had a dishwasher that you had to actually plug into the kitchen sink. And so you plugged in this old dishwasher in the kitchen sink and the dishwasher ran. Well, it required you to unload the dishwasher in the morning so that the oncoming crew could have nice clean dishes and could start their day. Well, on more than one occasion, some of my firefighters would forget to unload the dishwasher. And so, after speaking to them more than once, I was told by the lieutenant that once again, the dishwasher was not unloaded. Well, I decided that the best course of action at the time was to get on the phone and call those firefighters on their personal day, on their personal time, and I told them that one of them needs to go back and unload the dishwasher because the other crew shouldn't have to do that work for them, and on their day off. And I was not very nice about it. I was rather direct and rather abrupt about my desire and what I wanted them to do. Well, the next time we all came together, the next shift, I observed in my station with my firefighters, I observed a lot of resistance on how things were being done. We had lost the camaraderie. And it wasn't until my engineer pulled me aside after a few shifts of going through these, strained relationships in the firehouse, which any firefighter can tell you, a firehouse is a very unique place. And, it's built on relationships. It's built on bonds. And it was very strained at the time. And my engineer pulled me aside and said, it's the way that you talk to the guys. It's the how you made them feel and you belittled them. and over a dishwasher, over dishes, over another shift talking bad about them. And, you know, in hindsight, looking back, it was never my intention. My intention was not to belittle the guys. My intention was not to talk down to them or anything. My intention was to get their attention so that they could do something simple like empty the dishwasher. Such a trivial thing, but my point is that as a as a company officer, I learned some very valuable skills on how to deal with situations, how to deal with people, and to get the most out of a negative situation and turn it into a positive one. And I still use this to this day of this saying. It has nothing to do with what you do, but it has everything to do with how you make people feel. And when you make people feel less than human, or you make people feel less than themselves, you will never get anything out of that person. And I had to recover from overreacting and dealing with a situation so trivial like a dishwasher.
So how about your successes?
I don't have any of those. Um,
Well, let me give you some context, because those instances that shape us, it's not necessarily the things that we know how to do and get them right. It's those instances where we're like, oh crap, I've never experienced this before. How do I apply my past experiences to overcome this situation? And when it works out in your favor, you're like, whew, I got to remember that. And that type of success, I think, stays with us, creates a much more firm uh, mode of operation. It helps us solidify our decision making processes better than just something that comes second nature, and it works out the way it always does. You know what I'm saying?
I'm not really sure if it is a success, or I had a vision, and due to some unfortunate situation that took place in the fire department, I was able to put someone in a position that has really proven to be successful. And So for years, the Maitland Fire Rescue Department did not have a dedicated training individual, a training chief. And due to the resignation of a member, I was able to reshape fire administration and restructure things and bring in a shift supervisor, a shift lieutenant, into a training chief, training officer position. And this individual is very experienced, very qualified for that position, but it is one that we have not had in this fire department in quite some time. Being a small fire department, we really rely on the companies to provide the training to the entire department. And I knew that I wanted to have training conducted in a more uniform fashion. And so I brought up a lieutenant, a shift lieutenant, to start running our training for the entire department. It was a leap of faith, not only for the lieutenant, because I wasn't sure that he was going to enjoy going from shift work to days. And the other leap of faith was I wasn't so sure that the department was going to be ready to follow under a uniformed approach with training, as opposed to a more of a shift level training approach. And so fast forward 2 years from now, it is a fine-oiled machine that is working very well, and our department is probably better than ever at certain operations. And it has been through the success of this training chief that was able to tie in some loose ends and really bring the department together.
You want to share their name? Give them
Sure.
kudos?
The name is Chris Clayton. He's a division chief of training.
Nice. I'm curious what advice you would give to young men and women that are considering a career in the fire service. Advice that you would give to current firefighters that are looking to promote, and then chief officers who want to be better leaders.
Well, I'm going to say this one thing, and this kind of goes all the way across the board with all the positions, from people that aren't even in the job yet to those that are looking to become fire chief. And that is, it's not about you. It is not about you. It is about them. It is about the people that we serve out there, the people that are subject to call 911, your elected officials, and then the people that you work with. It is about them. You need to be the very best firefighter and the very best either paramedic or EMT that you can be for those people, because nothing in this job is by yourself. Now, for the entry level firefighter, for the person that's looking to get into the job, this job is scrutinized and looked at with a microscope. So keep your nose clean, prepare to be the public servant, and then remember that you are going to answer the call to someone on their very worst day. And so be ready for that. Every day, be ready for that. Do not let any day go for granted. And as long as you are a better firefighter, better paramedic, or EMT, when you get off shift than you were when you started shift, then you've done something right. To a firefighter that's looking to become an officer, build on the lessons that you've learned and make sure to listen to those that work around you and harness the skills that they have to make your shift be the best shift that it can be. And then lastly, treat people with respect, and they'll give you all the respect in return. To a future fire chief, remember who you work for. You don't work for yourself. You work for the people, and never lose sight of your mission.
How do you continue to learn in order to stay ahead of the curve within your role as fire chief?
Well, luckily in Central Florida, there's a great collaboration with other fire chiefs and other chief officers. So I'm constantly communicating with the fire chiefs in Orange and Seminole County. So that's one, collaborating with other chiefs, learning lessons learned, learning the things that they are doing right and the things that they are doing wrong. The other thing is constantly reading the same things, but from around the country, and then paying attention to what's going on. Trying to, one of the most difficult things of being a fire chief is anticipating what the next crisis is going to be. Just like, 2 years ago, anticipating a pandemic and anticipating how bad that pandemic was going to impact us. Or, here in the state of Florida, anticipating the next big hurricane and how it's going to impact your community. And so learning from case studies and learning from the things that have gone right and wrong in your area, and just trying to stay on top of what the next thing is going to be. But I cannot stress enough the importance of collaborating with your fellow fire chiefs, because for the most part, we are all going through the same thing, or have gone through the same thing, or are going to go through the same exact thing that each other are going through. So learning from each other has been the greatest strength that I can think of.
What technology related to your role are you researching the most right now?
Gosh, it's such a difficult question, because I would say just technology in general and all aspects of technology we're researching a tremendous amount.
Well, I would
I,
imagine that through the accreditation process, there's technology that you've had to look into to help um, run the department more efficiently.
yeah, so I would say right now, the thing that we are on the brink of looking at is inventory control technology, whether it's medication and just overall inventory. Um, it has the ability to save a tremendous amount of money for fire departments. And so, a department our size, we rely on the members to carry the brunt of the load of inventory control. And as the demand for our members increases because of call load, there is a need for us to look at technology to help maintain that. And so there's lots of companies out there that provide inventory control, equipment usage, and its useful life. Um, so that is something that we are looking into that would really help our accreditation efforts, both with ambulance accreditation and fire.
If you could do anything, if you had an unlimited budget and somebody tasked you with making some changes to the fire service in the United States, if you could do anything to improve the fire service in America, what would you do?
I would bridge the gap between the hospitals and healthcare and emergency medicine. I would make it more seamless for EMS personnel to obtain the records and to assist patients that are released from the hospital into their own private residence, and allow for the constant communication between their medical professionals, their doctors, the hospital staff, and EMS, because there's a tremendous breakdown in communication there. And I believe that it drives to a lot of unnecessary trips to the hospital by patients that could have otherwise have been prevented. And on the surface, that approach is already underway in some areas by means of a community paramedicine program. But if I had unlimited funds, I would enhance that much more, because ultimately the patients out there would benefit from less trips to the emergency department and less trips into the hospital.
So how would you streamline that communication process?
Well, immediately when a patient was released from the hospital, that information would go into a database that EMS personnel would be able to tap into. And when the EMS personnel arrived at the scene of the house, the paramedics would be able to access that information and look at the last time the person was in the hospital, the treatment that they got, their diagnosis, their follow-up procedures, who their doctors are, and if necessary, collaborate between those two entities to determine the best course of action for that patient. Because I believe that the emergency department is not always the best place for that patient to end up.
And you believe that in some areas that is occurring with the community paramedicine programs?
I do. I do believe it is happening. The other thing that the fire service isn't very good at, it is not very good at doing things as a collective group. For instance, I heard one of your podcasts, Chief Otto Droz stated that that law enforcement is very good about doing things as a regional effort or a state effort or a national effort. And fire departments, we have fallen short of that. And so that's why there are agencies in this country that have a well-established community paramedicine program, but then you have others that aren't. It's because there's not a general approach to handle something like law enforcement does, as Chief Droz talks about in his podcast. And so that's why there are areas that have a well-established community paramedicine program, and that's great, but we have an opportunity to make it better. And if I had unlimited funds, that would be the place that I would dump a tremendous amount of money in, because it would allow fire departments and EMS providers to really answer the call for those that are truly in need. As our call demand increases, it would allow us to answer those calls without overtaxing the system on unnecessary trips to the hospital.
When did you take over the position of fire chief?
January of 2019.
So in the last 2 years as fire chief, what has inspired you most?
The support of the firefighters in Maitland and the trust that they have instilled in me, especially over the last year.
Can you elaborate on that a little?
I'm a very young fire chief, and so to some, I may seem underqualified or inexperienced to take on this position. And so I would be naive to think that that wasn't the case with some of my own firefighters and some of my own command staff. But I have received nothing but support and trust in changes that I've made, decisions that I've made in the direction of the fire department. And over the past year, in dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic, we've had to make drastic changes in our day-to-day operations. Some of those changes taking place overnight, and then doing a 180 to a different change the very next day. Yes, there have been some difficulties making those changes because they were so drastic, but every one of the changes has been met in open arms and welcomed by everyone in the fire department. It's a humbling experience to be in this position and have individuals that work with you that give you that much trust. And I just, probably the number one thing I think about coming to work every day is living up to that trust by the firefighters and also the citizens, City Hall, the elected officials. I mean, it's a humbling experience to be in this position and to accept that.
And that being said, I know full well that being in that position and being being the fire chief with that knowledge that you have to live up to that trust that they're giving you, there's a level of stress that comes with that. And I'm sure that you think about it a lot and kind of shape a lot of your decisions, hoping that you are able to live up to their expectations. So not only is there that stressor, but just the everyday stresses of being a fire chief and being the conduit between City Hall, the citizens, and your firefighters and fire officers. You've mentioned that when you retire, you want to retire healthy. So my question is, how do you manage your day to day? How do you manage your stress? And how are you getting enough sleep and enough exercise?
Well, I wake up every day at 4:30 in the morning and I run and exercise for approximately an hour to an hour and a half every morning before work. And I have to do that because I have to, one, it helps me wake up. Two, it helps me get motivated for the day. And it just overall relaxes me throughout the entire day. I'm not a night person, so I have to wake up early and I have to get it done. And once I get to the office, I tackle every day with a project list, and it's a gigantic in basket exercise, day in and day out, prioritizing things with the most crucial, and then chipping away at things as they come into play any given day.
Is that something that you've established throughout your career, or is that way of operating um, a result of somebody mentoring you?
No, it's not how I've always been. No, no, not really at all how I've always been. I was operating at the scene of a small brush fire on an island in the center of Lake Maitland, and after working on a brush fire on an island, as ironic as that is, we returned to the dock, and I had a medical event that is still unexplained, that required me to be transported to the hospital while I was on duty. I remember looking at myself in the mirror in the hospital room and realizing that I was starting to get out of shape and that I wasn't very proud of how I looked. This is when I was a lieutenant. And from that point forward, I really tried to work on my physical health. But it wasn't until about 3 years ago that I started running a lot and really shedding the weight and achieving the mental health that I wanted. And so that is what running has done for me. Is it has allowed me to get outside or inside on a treadmill and just get into my happy place, and and remember that mental and physical health is paramount in any job, but paramount towards a long life. And it's the only way that I can remain relatively stress free in a very high stressed environment.
Is there anything that we didn't touch on that maybe you feel is important for the listeners?
I just appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you very much for allowing me to interview you. We covered a lot, and I really appreciate you sharing your lessons and advice and wisdom. I think that there's a lot of people that they listen to this, they'll get a lot out of it. I think it really covers the gambit. People aspiring to be firefighters, all the way up to chief officers. And not only that, but a lot of these lessons apply to any individual and any occupation. It's really how you treat people in your mindset when you're leading others, making sure that, like you said, it's not about you, it's about them.
Absolutely. I mean, that has to be the only way that we act as firefighters and as paramedics, is that we constantly come in every day, put on the uniform, and remember why we're here. You have to be the firefighter that you want to show up at your house when you dial 911. And if you can't be that, then you need to go home. And if you continuously can't be that, you need to consider another profession.
I agree. And I think everybody out there would agree with that. Yeah. Nobody calls 911 wanting somebody that's disgruntled.
Yeah. Nobody calls 911 and says, I'll take the B squad, or I'll take the D squad. You want the people that are going to be the number one. You want the best out there, period. So be your best.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Chief. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you, man. Continue to do the good work for all of us, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for listening to this episode of From Embers to Excellence. Please visit hallenbachleadership.com for additional content. Dave's goal is to add value to as many people as possible. So if he can be of any assistance to you or someone you know, please connect with him via email or on one of his social media accounts, linked on the homepage of his website. Remember, our failures don't define us unless we let them. And the only true measure of a leader is the success of their team.